Hey everybody, welcome to another installment of our live question and answer session. I am Meryl Stewart, CEO of Marketing and Business Solutions, and I am thrilled to have Jason Alpert of Alpert Enterprises with us today to talk about, kind of what's trending with virtual events and what he's seeing out there as he's working with clients. But as always, we welcome you to our little broadcast and to also ask questions. It's your chance to ask us questions about things that you're struggling with, that you're thinking about. We know that everybody is continuing to adjust and change as they go, and so we're here to help you as much as we can, and hopefully give you some tips and expertise that'll get you to the next place. So anyway, I want to officially welcome Jason, and I will do my best to make this introduction sound really good, Jason, by the way. So
bring it, I'm ready.
Jason is CEO of Alpert Enterprises. He started in 2005. He's an amazing talent in and of himself, but he also has an amazing team. Jason and his team host, MC. They do live auctioneering at events. They do voiceover talent. He was an on-camera reporter. Many of his team also have on-camera experience. But they just use, their talents, their gifts. They're getting it, crowds excited. They're engaging audiences. They're helping organizations raise lots of money. They're helping businesses get their story out. And I'm just thrilled to have him here today. So welcome to our show, Jason.
Meryl, I appreciate that. I will tell you that you can't call it a little broadcast, right? We need this thing to be huge, right?
We need to be giant. It's going to be giant. Yes.
We are going up against the network news programs. Big.
So actually, right now I am. You're right, because everyone's watching stuff that's online, and you're right. I can't put down this show as being little, because you're right. We're competing right now with all of the news stations. So you're right. So how's it going out there? How are you guys doing?
I mean, listen, ultimately we're okay, right? I mean, certainly everyone talks about the different climate that we're in right now, and we are experiencing that as well. I mean, we had 41 events scheduled between March 7th and June 1st. And of those 41, we're lucky enough to have, in the midst of, we've done 8 virtual events. We've got 4 more lined up over the next 4 weeks. So on one hand, we will have 12 virtual events as a company under our belt for the next, over the first kind of 2 or 3 months of the pandemic. But at the same time, we lost 30 events, right? And 30 events that either said that they want to postpone into the fall, and we certainly are doing our best to reschedule them whenever we can. But many of them just said, you know what, 2020 is not in the cards for us, and we're just going to punt and reschedule in 2021. So it's been a challenge, but certainly we are maneuvering our way to, keep this virtual option alive and show people that you can raise money virtually without having an in-person gala.
So talk to me a little bit about, virtual events. What are some things that you're telling people to consider, when they're trying to decide, do I do something in person and make it smaller? Do I, switch over to a virtual event? What are you kind of coaching people through as they're trying to make those decisions?
Yeah, I mean, one of the first things that we're sharing with people is something is better than nothing. Right. So the groups who did decide to cancel altogether, it was very frustrating for us, because they're going to show a 0 to their bottom line for that event for this year. So some of them got to keep some of the sponsorship dollars. But ultimately, when you're having an event, if we believe that we can go out and show a positive revenue stream for that event, something is better than nothing. So it may not be your $50,000 goal that you had, or even your $500,000 goal that you had, but ultimately, let's go out and make something and make it worth your while and your guests' while to continue having your events. And then once you decide to have the event, it's not that much different than an in-person event, right? The differences obviously are that you have to find a way to compel people to give through a live stream and through a camera, as opposed to having them in a room with you. So one of the biggest challenges is, how do you get people to log on and click on, and how do you get them to make it feel like it's their regular gala? But ultimately, we've got some great tricks of the trade that we're doing to get people to do that. So key number one, like I said, something is better than nothing. Let's have your event. And then once we decide to have your event, whether it be a gala, whether it be a 5K, whether it be a golf tournament, now let's figure out how we go out and raise money while we're there.
Well, and you and I have talked about this, from a, kind of partnering perspective, but you're right. I mean, planning an event, there's still all of the same pieces. I mean, the platform in which it's delivered obviously changes how you engage with your audience and your guests, but, you still need a strong message. You still have to put a program together. You still have to be able to tell your story and to be able to, especially if you're a nonprofit organization, be able to get people to emotionally tie and attach to what it is that you're doing, so that when your team is up there, asking people to give, that people open up their wallets as much as they can and give as much as they can and support that cause. I think the other thing that's a huge benefit, and you and I have talked about this, is that, you guys have on-camera experience. A lot of times, MCs and auctioneers may or may not have that kind of experience. And I think being able to interact with the camera or be in a more virtual setting. I know you're doing some stuff in studio. You're also doing some things on site at client locations, but I think that's a huge benefit, to be able to have that training and be able to know how to interact with a piece of technology in order to connect with your audience. So are you guys finding that that's a fairly easy transition for you?
I mean, we are. I mean, so we have four full-time auctioneers who work for the company, and three of us have deep-rooted, on-camera television backgrounds. Two of us in local news, and that's myself and Joe Gervin. And then our third partner with that kind of background, Geoff Cowan. I mean, he worked for Home Shopping Network. I mean, this is all this is, right? We are selling through a television camera. So he certainly has that expertise right there in his back pocket, and spent many, many years doing it in Australia as well. So ultimately, we believe that we have that skill set, not only to bring the energy to an in-person gala, but if you bring that energy, right, and you're able, and this is probably the biggest challenge of anything, is you have to take that energy that typically you siphon off of the crowd and you siphon off of the room to help build the energy in the room. You now have to do that in front of a room of 3 people instead of 300 people, right? Or 500 people. The 3 people are usually the guy running the technology, the one person from the charity, and one person from a mobile bidding platform, right? So that's your studio audience, and you have to do your best to siphon off them as much as you can, but have the same amount of energy when talking through that camera as you do when you're in front of a huge room of people.
I was going to say that I was going to ask you if the 3 people were me, myself, and I, but you just clarified that.
I didn't count the little people in my head. Yes, they talk to me too sometimes.
So what do you think? I mean, what's your prediction on what events are going to look like in the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months? Where do you think we're headed with this as organizations and companies are kind of planning on what to do next?
Right. I mean, I think the biggest thing that's going to come out of this is we are going to see some sort of virtual element to every event we do moving forward, right? I don't think any of us want this to be a full-time virtual gala only situation. But at this point, now that the technology is there, and it's always been there, and quite frankly, we dabbled in this a little bit over the past couple of years, where a charity would have a camera set up, we'd be streaming live on Facebook, and we would just kind of remind them, hey, oh, by the way, if you're watching on Facebook, you can donate this way. But why wouldn't we have that in every single event we do? Why wouldn't we have if you have mobile bidding, promote that as much as you can during the gala, get people to tune in, watch the event, and then direct them how to give, right? Ultimately, be able to translate that into donors. So I think that's the biggest thing that's going to come out of this, is that it's going to be some way to have a virtual element for every event that we do. But listen, I believe that the growth of what we're doing for events now back to whatever normal will be, it's going to be really small steps, right? There are organizations right now that are in October and November who are already saying we're going to go 100% virtual. There is a local event here in the Tampa Bay area in February 2021 that isn't willing to hold their event. And they've already said we're either canceling or going virtual. So there's a lot of repercussions from this.
Wow.
But if you ask about what the steps are going to be, we're working with one group in particular who normally has a 400-person gala. They're talking about doing a 150-person gala. And instead of doing 10 top tables, they're going to have 75 bistro tables, 2 people at every table. Right? There's no band, but you're still going to welcome them into the room. They're going to do some different service options. So there's a lot of different things that people are working on and talking about, and baby steps to get back to that, hundreds and hundreds of people at a gala at one time.
Well, I also think too, that from a cost-effective standpoint, I think about, and we've planned events for clients for years. We don't we take on choice projects now, but we've done that. And I know, firsthand that it's the amount of work that goes into planning any event is tremendous, whether it's virtual or not. But from a cost perspective, especially if a nonprofit organization is looking at changing things up, I mean, I think about, the costs that go into putting on a virtual event are significantly less when you count, how much you spend on entertainment, on valet parking, on food, and beverages and all of those different elements. And so I do think, and I've said this on some of our previous broadcasts, but I do think it's a good time to try it, for organizations that are kind of on the fence about what do. We don't know if we should do anything. I think it's worth testing the waters and trying. And the benefit of the virtual element is that you get to broaden your audience. So there's lots of people that can't be somewhere in person at an event. Well, now's the chance to get in front of them and to be able to have their, some level of interaction from them, whether you have an auction or a live component or whatever that is, and still engage them in supporting your cause. So I do think that it allows a little more flexibility for organizations. It's just, it's a mindset, it's change. And so, but I think that one of the best things is that there are many people out there, and your team included, that just has a tremendous amount of expertise, talent. You guys are comfortable doing this. And so for a client to be able to make that transition, I think it's a lot easier when the people and the experts they're engaging and help them feel comfortable with it. So I'm glad that that's something that that you guys are able to do. What is, something I heard this term, and I'm interested to hear more about this, but what is latency, Jason, and how does that affect auction fundraising? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, if you look in the dictionary, latency is defined as an auctioneer's worst nightmare, right? I mean, ultimately, it makes it very, very difficult to do anything where you need to do something instantaneous, right? There are video platforms, whether it be this one that you're watching on right now, and Meryl, you and I are on live.blive.tv, right?
Yep, right.
But that is being broadcast through Facebook. Is that how we're doing this today?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
So, right. So I will tell you the words that are coming out of my mouth and your mouth, right? If I were to have Facebook open up here at my house, I would be speaking now, and somewhere between 10 and 40 seconds, it's getting to Facebook, right? So I don't know if there's little hamsters that aren't running fast enough on their wheels or whatever it is to get my voice out there quick enough. But for the platforms that are able to handle large amounts of people on them, the latency, which is the amount of time that it takes for the delay to get from my mouth to somebody who might be watching at home, that is what latency is, right? And on this platform, the original platform that we're originating from, this blive.tv, it's relatively quick. On most sites like this, it's like a half a second to 1.5 seconds. On Zoom, everyone hears Zoom and knows Zoom, but quite frankly, Zoom, if you try to put 200 or 300 or 400 people on Zoom, it's not the best platform to handle something like that. So we are relying on the platforms that are better able to handle that, which is the Facebooks and the YouTubes and the Vimeos. But when we do that, we lose the latency. So what we have to do is we have to understand that when I say there's 30 seconds left in this particular live auction item, and we are doing true live auctions, right? And when I say that there's 30 seconds left in this live auction, we have somebody who's in the room with us with a mobile bidding platform, and in their head or maybe on their phone, they set a 60-second counter. And the reason why they do that is because I'm saying it, it's getting to the person at home 30 seconds later, they're hearing me say there's 30 seconds left in this item. And so during that time, while I'm up there tap dancing, I'm saying, listen, don't rely on the exact 30 seconds, right? It's going to be about 30 seconds. So get your bids in, all bidding still done on your phone. Don't rely on the Wi-Fi or the cell phone signal. Put in your bids. And as soon as the mobile bidding company announces that it's closed, then we'll announce who our winner is. But it's very different than me being able to kind of put the pressure on people right before I say sold at a live event.
Right. So talk about that a little bit, the live event components. And this is something you and I talked about this about a week or so ago. And I know that there's some videos and things you guys have done about this, but I was really impressed that you and your team can actually do a live auction virtually, and people can be on their phones, reacting, I guess, through the mobile apps and mobile bidding apps and things like that. So tell me about that experience. And maybe you guys are getting ready to do one, but I know that the capability's there and there's been some practice runs of that. So what does that look like for you guys? Are you finding success with it as people interact with that kind of technology?
Yeah, we are having success. It is a different feeling, right? Ultimately, when we do a fully virtual event, what we typically do is we close the silent auction during the event. So what we do is we basically take a break during our gala, although it's not a true break, but we'll say there's 3 minutes left in your silent auction. You all have been bidding for 4 or 5 days on your mobile bidding platform. There's 3 minutes left. We're up there. We kind of talk in general about some of the items. We might talk about the items with no bids. We might talk about the hot bidded items that have been bid on. And then we say, okay, the silent auction is now closed, right? And they close it. And all those silent auction items get closed together. But then we go into the live auction, and the difference between these items, the bidding is very, very similar. You're still doing all the bidding on your phone, but instead of that, we are now saying, okay, we are now going to do one individual item. Here is that one item that we're going to bring up for bid. We put up slides or pictures of those items. We might play a video for those particular items. We're promoting just that item. While that item is being bid on, we have what's called a confidence monitor, which is a monitor that faces me that the guest can't necessarily see. And on the confidence monitor, I see the bid history. So I say, this item, the bid started at this dollar amount, and I can call out people by name or by bidder number, just as if it were during a live event, as if I was pointing to them as they were bidding. But I call them out by name. I say, okay, our top bidder right now is Meryl Stewart. We want to know the person who she most recently outbid is, I'll throw Ryan Gonzalez in there, is Ryan Gonzalez, right? Ryan, are you going to get back in and outbid Meryl before we close this one out? So we still can kind of use that competitiveness that we hope to generate in a live auction between each other. And then, but it's still the same thing with the latency. I then say, after I feel like I've kind of milked it as much as I can, I say, okay, there's going to be about 30 seconds left in this item. Get your last bids in. When the mobile bidding tells me it's closed, then it's closed.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. I mean, I just think it's cool, I mean, and it's not, I know, I've used other mobile bidding platforms for different clients for events over the years. And, the one thing we've always shied away from is doing the live bidding on through the mobile app, really, because if you're at an event, from an experience perspective, you want the energy in the room and the audience that's there to participate in the live auction. But I just love the fact that now you have the opportunity to integrate that into a virtual event, and you guys are making it work. I just think it's great. And that, the data that's kind of pooling, so who's bidding against each other, and you can still personalize it. I think that's phenomenal, because people feel better when they know that they're being seen or they're being heard, and they're participating against other people trying to raise money for a cause. So I think that's really cool. Is there a, is there,
Marilyn, let me
sure,
share with you too,
go ahead.
that the bid from the heart portion of the program is so important to us as well, right?
Yeah.
Which is just the straight out donation. We call it the bid from the heart. It's the ask, the give, the cash call, the raise your paddle, whatever your organization calls it. That still remains the most important part of the program for us, right? And as much fun as we have during the live auction and selling those items when we can, it really comes down to the mobile bidding platform, being able to show on the screen as people are at home and hitting how much they want to donate, and that number shows up on the screen, and we're able to use that confidence monitor and call out the people who are donating, and we're watching the thermometer or the heart all fill up. That is still really part of it, where the emotion sets in, bidding breeds bidding, the momentum starts to fill as people are giving. So that's still, I think that's relatively similar, of using the people's names to specifically call them out at an event when they donate.
I agree. Are you finding that there's a difference between the in-person event and the virtual, as far as the number of live auction items that people should be using? Is there a certain number of items that you recommend that people look at? Is it any different for virtual events?
I mean, we lean lesser on the live auction items at in-person events to begin with, right? We usually recommend somewhere between 3 and really maxing out at 7. Right? And we don't go that high very often anyway, but because our philosophy is really, we got to get to that bid from the heart. The live auction primes the room. It gets everyone in the giving mood. It's entertainment. It's fun, but we got to get to that donation part of the program. So I believe that the number of items at a virtual event may even be lesser than that. Maybe it's 3 to 5, simply for the same reason. I think you probably have a smaller attention span when people are sitting at home watching your event. So I think the live auction items are probably a few less at a virtual event than an in-person event.
Okay. No, that's good. I think it's always kind of nice to know what the best practice is, to be able to get the most out of the experience and the audience. But I agree with you, the bid from the heart, especially for someone that works with many nonprofit clients and really helping them craft their stories. That's the part of the event that's the key. That's where you want people to give as much as possible. And you guys have some great ways of engaging people and kind of getting that last $100 out of folks, especially at live events. I've watched your team do it. So has that changed? Is there, are you still kind of focusing on, doing that last $100 raise and getting people to bid on something or donate that way?
Right. I mean, it's crazy that sinister game continues to work. Right.
Well, so tell people how it works, because
Right.
I didn't do a very good job of explaining it.
Right. I mean, ultimately, we call it the last man standing. Like everything else, it's got lots of different names. But what it basically is, at a live event, we give a prize to the person who gives $100 last. Right. It is a sinister game. I could often keep that game going for 20 or 25 minutes.
It's amazing.
Everyone thinks they're going to be the last $100 donor, right? But ultimately, we decide who's last, and we usually cut it off after 4 or 5 minutes, just because enough is enough, right? And we close it out and we announce who our winner is. But we're doing the same game in the virtual format, and again, I've got that confidence monitor up. I'm watching people hit the donation button, or I'm watching their names pop up as they hit the donation button, and people continue to donate $100, hoping to get that one final prize, as long as the prize is good enough, right? If you give me a 2-night stay at the Vinoy that doesn't expire for 2 years, we're going to do great with that game. So if you got a good prize for that and people are willing to give $100 to play that little game, we can do really well with it. So it still works.
That's awesome. Well, I've got people over here on the comment section, and so one is saying, "In Jason we trust." So these must be your family members that you told to watch.
Right, right.
But we did have a question from Marlene. So she's asking, have you ever used Lunch Pool for a fundraising event? I'm personally not familiar with Lunch Pool. Have you heard of Lunch Pool, Jason?
I haven't. I'm guessing it's a mobile bidding platform. I don't really know, even by the name of it, what it would
Me
mean.
neither.
But right. So the answer is no. But it is amazing to me how the mobile bidding platforms are coming out of the woodworks. I mean, Fundraising Auctions is the name of a new company that's come out. I mean, Silent Auction Pro is a company that's out there. I mean, they're just coming out of everywhere.
I agree. And Marlene, if you have any other information on Lunch Pool and you want to send it, put the link in the comments, and Jason and I can take a look at it and get back with you. If there's questions about it. But I'm not familiar with that platform right at the moment. And then apparently Ryan heard us talking about her. So Ryan Gonzalez submitted a question and said, what are some good auction items in this time? Are you seeing that there's certain things that are going better than others from a virtual standpoint, or what are you seeing, Jason?
I think from a global perspective, they haven't changed that much, right? Dinners are still my favorite thing to do in live auctions, right? They're still selling the best because everyone eats, right? We haven't stopped eating during the pandemic. We might be eating differently, but especially whether it's in home or at a restaurant, those are still selling really, really well. So we want to continue to do dinners. And quite frankly, travel is still selling well. Even international travel is selling well, especially if you can get extended expiration dates. I mean, most of the consignment companies out there have extended it to 2. Some of them are even 3-year expiration dates. So if you can get that, or if your donors who are donating places to stay, second homes, vacations, if you can get them to extend their dates on that, you can do just fine. I'll also tell you that there's a lot of virtual options that are coming up for auction items as well. There's a group that we work with called Charity Booster. What Charity Booster is offering is a Hamilton virtual experience, and you don't get to watch the Hamilton show, but you do get to have a video chat with a member of the Hamilton cast right at the theater.
Really?
So they'll walk you through backstage to kind of show you around what you want to see. And so there's virtual wine tastings that are being offered up, where if you win that auction item, they're going to ship you X amount of bottles of wine, and then you're going to be on a video chat with the sommelier or the vintner at the winery doing your virtual wine tasting.
That's cool.
So there's some pretty
cool
ideas
cool.
out there. Yeah. Meryl, the
That's very
light,
cool.
bing, you just had a light bulb. That's great.
I know. I have a million ideas going through my head right now. I'm like, wow, I didn't even think about that. So yeah, I'm in trouble. I'm going to have to write down a whole bunch of this stuff after we're done. So another question from Amanda, what is the most creative, highest grossing live auction item you've ever, or I guess live auction you've ever sold? So creative, highest grossing live auction item you've ever sold.
Yeah, I mean, those are kind of two different things, right? I mean, the most creative, we because we do some really creative. I mean, listen, I was doing an event in Orlando where there was a country music singer who was there, and his name was, this is 3 or 4 years ago. Anyway, he was, I can tell you at the time, he was the opening act for Luke Bryan, right? So he was up and coming. He had a #1 hit for what that's worth. And they basically almost impromptu came up on stage and said, hey, listen, he's willing to go with 2 of his musicians from his band. We'll fly them wherever they want to go. They're going to put on a private concert for you wherever you want to go. You and to it, you know. So if you want to have your daughter's sweet 16, graduation, your wedding reception, your anniversary, whenever you want him to come play, and it sold for $105,000. Right. So,
wow.
I mean, it's crazy to think that that's one that they didn't even really have planned. $100,000 just kind of fell in their lap at that event. Right. But I mean, we've done things too.
Most places would be happy to get that. Yeah, that's amazing.
Some people are thrilled with that being their highest net for the entire event. Right.
Right.
But I'll tell you too, I mean, from a perspective of things that have sold really well or planned and sold really well. I mean, we worked with a group down in South Florida who had a relationship with the owner of an advertising agency, and he was like, listen, what am I going to give you? Billboard space, radio time? You don't want that. And I said, no, let's sit down with some of your clients, or tell me who your best client is. Let's see what they can do. And he handled the National Party City television account. And so we basically went to hit the Party City and said, hey, listen, would you be willing to auction off the opportunity for us to put a kid in a National Party City television commercial? Right. And they said, cool. Yeah. They agreed to do it. And again, the advertising agency was in South Florida. The event was in South Florida. They shot the commercial in South Florida, so there's no hard cost to it. And they ended up sending a limo to pick the kid up, and had grapes and food in the limo for him, like they were a celebrity and star. And I think that sold for like $14,000. So again, we really try to make things right. We try to make things almost fall out of the air to raise money.
Yeah, I think, well, and, a lot of times if you can double something, so if you're able to double an experience, you don't tell everybody that you're doing it, but if you're able to, start with a live auction item that can be duplicated, that's something that's pretty amazing. I just had Jason fall off, so maybe he'll come back. But that's another way to raise some additional funds for your organization, is to, double something or even triple it, especially if it's something that doesn't have a lot of additional costs to it, like a trip, that someone's maybe offering. And hello, Jason. And I know, I was like, he left. I was just talking about the doubling and tripling of items. So I was saying, something that's great is if someone has like a trip or a week away or, anything like that, and they're able to offer it 2 or 3 times, and there isn't really any cost to the organization for it, and you just tripled or doubled, your money on an item. That's a great way to quickly raise some additional funds too. All right, I have a couple more questions for you. So, Gregory's on. He says, "Hi guys." So this is from John. He's asking, what's an appropriate lead time for planning an event? I have my own thoughts on that. You want to talk first?
Right. Listen, in an absolute perfect world, right, I would love to get 8 to 12 months, right, where you really put a plan together, and those first couple months are really just laying out your plan, and then by 8 months out, you're really diving in, you're hitting the ground running. But so much of that is because of sponsorships. You want to give people enough lead time, because you're always going to have people who say, oh, you're too late. And you're always going to have people who said, oh, you're too early. Right. So we want to ask them, 10 months out, and we want to ask them 2 months out, both times. So I think so much of that has to do with sponsorship, and also getting venues and getting other vendors. I mean, we book up to 18 months in advance. Right. So if you want to get the good vendors and the good venues, you got to start booking early.
Well, and I think too, I mean, from on the fundraising side, so you're talking specifically about sponsorships and raising kind of all those pre-dollars for the event. I would say, 8 months to 12 months is ideal. I would say no less than 6 months. It's really hard to pull an event together with less than 6 months of planning. It's possible. It's very difficult to have sponsorships commit to, especially to nonprofit events, when there's not enough lead time, and mostly because they haven't budgeted for it. So the nice thing about the lead time is that you have the chance to usually go and approach sponsors when they are doing their budget planning, especially if your event falls, in between calendar years. It gives you more time to go ask for the auction items, to make sure that you have to think about all the other competing organizations in across the country, across the world. I mean, everyone's planning their events at similar times. So being able to have that time to get the items you need, to get the sponsorship dollars in, that's really most of the reason for the planning, and to secure the vendors and the places that you want. I think with a shift in more virtual events, the venue isn't maybe as important, might be, but it may not be as important, but the vendors are. I mean, you guys are still booking things out, 8 to 12 months in advance. I mean, I know that, the platform and kind of the way that the event is being experienced may have changed, but not necessarily the need for your services. I mean, you guys are still booking out quite a bit, right?
Yeah, no doubt. And that's what I said. I mean, it's part of the vendors too, to get that timing in
Right.
there. But listen, I will tell you that could we put together a virtual event in 4 to 6 weeks? Yes, but it's going to make
Yes.
everyone miserable. So unless you have to do it that quickly, I wouldn't recommend doing it that quickly. I would tell you, and one of the things that I want to make sure is clear that, so many people see us and, hey, we're live auctioneers and we're MCs, but really our greatest value to an organization comes as kind of a fundraising consultant, right? I mean, we work with organizations that become part of their planning committee for the event. We don't help you decide between chicken and fish. We don't decide if you should have chair covers on your table. But from a fundraising perspective, we work with you every step of the way leading up to the event to raise as much money as you can. Yeah. Which leads me up to one of the things that we always share with our groups is, we oftentimes have a potential sponsor say, oh, sorry, we're already allotted for this year. We don't have any more money, or you're too late. And I always say how you need to respond to that is, oh, no, I wasn't asking for this year's event. I was asking ahead of time for next year's event.
I'm asking for next year.
Yeah. So flip the coin on them really quickly and tell them whenever you want me to ask, that's what I'm asking for. Just give me the money.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, it's not taking no for an answer, and being really strategic. And so if someone does say no, I do the same thing when I'm working with clients and asking for auction items. I mean, it's no, we can't do it this year. Oh, well, that's okay. I was talking about the following year. They're like, right. Oh yeah, we can do that. So it's taking advantage of the opportunity to, lay the groundwork, have conversations, engage people in what you're doing, and try to get them to commit for anything, if they're not going to do it for this year, at least for the next one. But to your point, yes, I mean, can someone pull off an event, a virtual event, fairly quickly? Yes. I think the things to think about are, one, what are you competing with, out there? So is your audience going to show up? If they have, 5 other things that they've been invited to, because everybody's trying to plan stuff right now, will they have the time to be there? 2 is letting them know, in enough advance notice so they can get it on their calendars, but they can also share it with other people that could come. And 3, that you really have time to pull together the elements of the event that are going to raise the money. And so, whether you're incorporating a live auction, or you have a silent auction, or you're just doing, a programmatic kind of element with a give, or bid, from the heart component, you still need time to develop that story. And that can be done fairly quickly. But it's just, you're right. I mean, it's do you have capacity? What support do you have on your side? What, people are you engaging and helping you? What vendors, or experts or consultants are helping you pull all of that together? And what volunteers, your board, advocates are willing to help tell their stories, so that, there's that component of it. So can it be done? Yes. But, it's always nice to have more time. Sure. Another question we have from Nicole is, what would be the ideal length for a virtual event?
Yeah, one of my favorite sayings is, it's not how long something is, it's how long it feels, right? So, I mean, there are some events that we've seen that have gone an hour and a half, if not more, and you're so engaged in it that it doesn't feel like it's that long at all. But in general, we're kind of telling people that between 45 minutes and an hour and 15, and even an hour 15 is pretty heavy. But you want to kind of get in, give them some good entertainment, tell them your message and your mission, ask for the money, and get out. So think about that long.
I love it. Actually, I've been to 2 virtual events now for organizations, and both of them have been an hour, like on the dot. And I think that's been pretty good. It's been just enough time to kind of get into it and get into the mood of what's happening. But then, it doesn't feel too long, so that it was enjoyable. And, I'm not looking at my watch going, okay, when is it going to be done? So an hour's been pretty good, at least from my experience.
Yeah.
So one last question I have for you, Jason, and then if anyone else has questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section. Jason and I can always respond after we're done. But are there any other kind of unique elements or ways that you're seeing people engage their audience to make them feel like that they're being thought about, that it's kind of that in-person feeling without them being in person? And I'll give you an example, and then you can tell me if you've seen this yet. But one of the virtual events I went to, they really did a really good job of partnering with a local restaurant, a local winery. You could order food, beforehand. You could order wine beforehand. Everything got delivered to your house. They sent some things ahead of the event, about the organization, kind of like things you would see in a program, or like on the table centerpieces and things like that made you feel kind of festive about it. So it almost made you feel like you're a part of this larger community of people that was all experiencing the same thing that night, in addition to, the live event that was online. But it kind of made you feel like you were part of something without all being together. So are you seeing, organizations kind of implement anything that makes people feel like they're together without really being together?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things. Certainly the dinner option that you suggested is a good one. People are doing what they're calling Gala in a box, right? And Gala in a box is a bottle of champagne, 2 wine glasses, some branded hand sanitizer, and a purple feather boa, right? Which is what they give out to people who donate during their Bid from the Heart. So I've had organizations do that, and I thought that was a nice touch. The other thing, which I think is really nice, is they're offering their sponsors, if your virtual gala is from 6:30 to 7, we usually open up the live window, for example, at around 6 o'clock, just so people can get on a little bit early. They can watch, they can test their audio, they can see some of the sponsors and whatnot, and just some sort of looping or scroll. But what some groups are doing is they're actually doing a Zoom sponsor reception beforehand. And they're basically inviting VIPs into a Zoom room where they can kind of interact with each other, see each other, say hello. They have someone from the organization who's kind of moderating that. But ultimately, I think that's a good way that they're able to get everybody included and made it feel like a gala with them.
That's cool.
Right.
That's really cool. I want a boa. I want a purple feather boa. Nicole, who's on here, says she wants a tiara. So yeah, I mean, everyone better be taking notes if you're inviting us to events. I want the purple boa. Nicole wants the tiara. I don't know, Jason, what you need in order for people, that extra mile people can go to make sure they get on your calendar.
At the right sponsor level, we'll give you whatever you want. Right?
Well, I want to thank you so much for being here today and for joining us. And you're multitasking clearly, but that's fine. I just had to plug in. And but I really, that's okay. Yeah, before you dropped off again. I want to thank you for coming and for being here and sharing all of your expertise and your thoughts. And I'm sure we'll be checking in again with you to see how things are going and if there's been any new developments. But I really appreciate it. And if anyone has any additional questions, as I mentioned, just add them to the comment section, and Jason and I will get back to you. We're both tagged on this, so we can follow up with you post broadcast. So thanks for being here, Jason.
No problem, Meryl. So are we on a time crunch, or do I have time to touch on one more thing?
Oh, no, you can touch on one more thing. Right. Go ahead.
So I will tell you, I mean, I kind of take some notes as we're going, and if I don't get back to them, I like to kind of do some rapid fire and just kind of touch on a few other things real quick as we go. Number one, I didn't want to startle anyone. Earlier on, I said that, there's some groups that are, late October who are already saying, and even in November, 100% virtual. I don't want to scare anyone because I'm working with another group that is September 5th, and they are all in 100% in-person event. So don't get startled. You have to do what's right for your organization and kind of be prepared to go either direction. But there are some groups that are certainly still planning on doing in-person events. I want everyone to remember that it is about net revenue, right? You got to get your mind off. I know you all like to promote your gross proceeds from your galas because it looks so pretty. But ultimately, when really determining the success or failure of a virtual event, it's about your net revenue. And if your net revenue is similar to what it would have been at a live or in a virtual event, you've done a darn good job, because there are a lot less expenses, but you will probably raise less money at a virtual event as well. And then one of the cool things, we touched on it just a little bit, one of the really cool things about the virtual format is the analytics that you get to see after the event about who was watching, where they were watching from, how long they watched for. And I did one event in Orlando a few weeks ago where the top auction item, we sold it 2 times. So there are ways to sell multiples using the live auction mobile bidding platforms. But we sold the top live auction item to 2 people who are out of state, who would have never come to the gala in person, right? So there are great opportunities to generate more revenue by selling to people who aren't there and taking donations from people who aren't there. We actually did one event. I was doing it. My partner, Geoff, is from Australia, and he's got a thick Australian accent, which people love. And we had someone watching from his hometown in Australia, and he swore it wasn't his people, right? So we looked at the analytics and we saw that there's really people watching from all over the world. And it's really neat to see people tuning in that you don't know where they're coming from or how they're getting there, but there's certainly opportunities to follow up with people, and now they become supporters of yours.
That's awesome. That's
Right.
great. Well, thank you for wrapping all of that up for us. And I do agree. I mean, it is a change, but it doesn't have to be a scary one. It's also what's right for your organization. And so, if it's downsizing or if it's changing formats or platforms or whatever it looks like, know that there's people here to help. I'm here. Jason's here. We have a lot of other friends and colleagues, who are well-versed in how to help you with this. And so if you have questions, please just let us know so we can help point you in the right direction and get you going. And anyway, it's been great. So thank you for being here and for sharing all of your wonderful knowledge with us today, Jason. And
Great.
I guess we'll, until next time, we'll be back and we're just continuing to do these broadcasts every Thursday at 4 p.m. So I look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you.